April 13th, 2013, Nebraska. An elite FBI strike team storms a suburban house. Inside, a man scrambles to close his laptop, but it's too late. Armed FBI agents flood the room. He's not a drug lord or a mob boss. He's the acting cybersecurity chief of a U.S. federal agency, and the FBI caught him on a child abuse forum. Not by tracing him, but by hacking the dark web itself. How did America's top law enforcers end up hacking like a criminal group? And what happens when the hunters become the hackers? 2012. Law enforcement faced a growing problem: criminals disappearing into the anonymity of the Tor network. Tor, a privacy tool endorsed by activists and even the U.S. State Department, was a double-edged sword. On one side, it protected journalists, political dissidents, and whistleblowers from repressive regimes. But on the other, it shielded drug markets, hackers for hire, and child predators operating in the darkest corners of the internet. For FBI agents tasked with hunting predators online, Tor was like a fortress protecting their targets in darkness. By 2011, child abuse forums like Pedoboard had become notorious and untouchable. In the Netherlands, a cybercrime unit got a lucky break. They discovered Pedoboard's admin login had no password. With a few clicks, Dutch agents slipped inside and traced the server's physical location to an unsuspecting data center in Bellevue, Nebraska. The site's operator was a 31-year-old IT worker named Aaron McGrath, who was quietly hosting at least 3 child pornography sites on his servers. They got the admin, but not the users. Because how do you catch a criminal you can't even find? Instead of rushing in to arrest McGrath, the FBI made a bold decision. Agents kept him under surveillance and did not tip him off that his secret was out. They realized they had a singular opportunity. What if they could turn McGrath's websites against their visitors? What if, instead of just shutting down the forum, they could use it as bait to identify everyone lurking in the shadows? For nearly a year, FBI investigators and Justice Department lawyers huddled in secret, devising a plan to do exactly that. The strategy would be unprecedented, legally and technically. They sought a special warrant that would let them not only seize the illegal sites, but operate them in order to hack their users. Late one night in November 2012, the plan kicked into action. FBI agents quietly seized McGrath's servers and whisked them off to an FBI facility in Omaha. The sites went dark only briefly. When they came back up, nothing seemed amiss to the users still browsing the forum's horrific content. But in the background, the code running on those sites had been altered by the FBI. The trap was set. Thousands of predators were back online. The question now was simple: who would click first and be the first to fall? For 2 weeks, the FBI became the administrator of a dark web child pornography site without the users ever knowing. Internally, agents dubbed this sting Operation Torpedo. Their secret weapon was a piece of tailor-made malware, euphemistically called a Network Investigative Technique, or NIT. It worked like a classic hacker's trick known as a drive-by download. Simply visit the compromised site, and the malware silently downloads to your computer. Except this time, the hacker wearing the black hat was the FBI. Once a visitor loaded the FBI's booby-trapped pages, the NIT would spring into action. It exploited a hidden vulnerability in the Tor browser, a modified Firefox browser, to break out of Tor's protections. The malware didn't vandalize the computer or steal files. It had one focused mission: expose the visitor's identity. In the milliseconds after a user clicked a link, the NIT pulled back their real IP address, along with details like their MAC address and PC hostname, then sent this data straight to an FBI server outside the Tor network. In other words, it punched a tiny hole in the Tor veil, just big enough to slip a tracer through. The dark web user would notice nothing unusual. The site would still display normally. But unbeknownst to them, their supposedly hidden computer had just handed its calling card to the FBI. But how many users would fall for it before the FBI struck? From an FBI operations center, agents watched as their malware reeled in target after target. Little dots on the map lit up as each suspect's location was uncovered. In that short 2-week span, the NIT unmasked at least 25 users in the United States plus more from as far away as Europe and South America. Every new ping from the malware was another alleged predator who had just given away their location. Agents marveled. This was something new, like shining a flashlight into a pitch-dark cave, and suddenly seeing the predator's eyes glinting back. But one of those glowing dots would stun even the agents watching. Some of the caught users panicked and tried to cover their tracks. One man spent only 9 minutes on the site and later frantically wiped his hard drive. It didn't matter. Digital forensics recovered traces of his activity, proving he had downloaded illegal images. Another user had been chatting on the forums with someone he thought was a fellow predator, trading techniques on how to stay anonymous. That friend was actually an undercover FBI agent. The suspect, eventually unmasked by the malware, turned out to be Timothy DeFoggy, the acting cybersecurity director of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Yes, the very person responsible for protecting Americans from cyber threats was secretly consuming the worst crimes imaginable. By April 2013, the FBI was ready to strike physically. They had quietly compiled real names and addresses from the IPs their NIT obtained. In coordinated pre-dawn raids across the country, agents knocked down doors and arrested suspected pedophiles who days earlier believed they were untouchable ghosts on the web. In total, at least 14 suspects were charged as a result of the Operation Torpedo investigation, and over a dozen would eventually be convicted. For the first time, an FBI cyber attack had punctured Tor's shield and led directly to real-world handcuffs. But now that the FBI had tasted success, how far would they take this new power? The FBI's secret hacker army had won a major battle, but not without controversy. In court, defense attorneys were stunned to learn that their clients had been hacked by the government. The FBI had initially been so secretive about its methods that suspects weren't notified of the malware deployment for months, well beyond the 30-day window the warrant allowed. Lawyers argued that this no-knock digital search violated the Fourth Amendment, likening it to a covert wiretap that was never disclosed. Privacy advocates shuddered at the implications. If the FBI could hack en masse like this, what limits would keep them from using it on other websites or against people who weren't hardcore criminals? The judge in the Nebraska cases ultimately upheld the FBI's tactics as legal, but a precedent was set, and a Pandora's box was now open. The Bureau had a taste of success using malware as a dragnet. The question was, how far would they go with it next? The FBI's next move would show both the power and the peril of its secret hacker army. Fast forward to August 2013. In Ireland, police arrest Eric Ian Marquez, the alleged operator of Freedom Hosting, the largest provider of anonymous web hosting on Tor. Freedom Hosting was massive. At its peak, it reportedly hosted half of all hidden sites on the Tor network. Yes, many were criminal sites, but Freedom Hosting also powered a popular email service used by thousands of ordinary people around the world for private, secure communication called Tormail. After Marquez's arrest, Freedom Hosting's sites mysteriously went down for maintenance. This was no ordinary downtime. The FBI had essentially commandeered the hosting provider's servers, similar to what they did in Operation Torpedo, but on a far grander scale. They had a new NIT ready, and this time it would be deployed like a wide net over every site hosted by Freedom Hosting. As users tried to log into any of the thousands of sites on that platform, whether to visit a criminal forum or just check their Tormail inbox, they were met with a seemingly benign maintenance page. Behind that page lurked the FBI's malware, primed to exploit a critical Firefox bug in the Tor browser bundle. Anyone who had JavaScript enabled, the default setting, was instantly infected. In a flash, their computer secretly sent its real IP address and unique MAC address to a server somewhere in Virginia, a server under FBI control. The user's anonymity was effectively shredded without them ever seeing a thing out of the ordinary. This mass hacking operation didn't discriminate. Unlike Operation Torpedo, where the FBI at least knew everyone visiting the site was there for criminal content, the Freedom Hosting takedown cast a blind net. Thousands of people around the globe got swept up in it. Child predators were unmasked, yes, but so were activists and reporters who had nothing to do with child abuse. A journalist using Tormail suddenly had her location exposed, just for logging in. A Syrian dissident using a hidden forum to evade government censorship unknowingly downloaded FBI spyware, possibly outing himself to US authorities. Anyone who visited any site on Freedom Hosting during the malware's deployment was effectively tagged and traced by the FBI's code. When word got out, the internet erupted in speculation and outrage. Security researchers dissected the mysterious code that had appeared on Tor sites and concluded it was almost certainly planted by law enforcement. The payload didn't do anything but report identifying information, a hallmark of an FBI IT. The FBI refused to officially confirm its involvement, but the evidence was clear. The ethical lines were now undeniably blurred. Journalists and dissidents, the very people Tor was meant to protect, had been collateral damage in an FBI hacking spree. That the FBI engaged in a bulk hacking operation against all visitors to Tormail, which had many lawful, valid uses, raises serious concerns, argued attorneys from the ACLU, in an attempt to unseal the secret court docket authorizing this sweep. This was a fundamental question. How far can law enforcement go? Is it acceptable to infect 100 innocents with malware in order to catch 10 criminals? The FBI was pushing the boundaries of investigative tactics, driven by righteous motive but now veering into territory that made even judges uneasy. In the shadows, the FBI's hacker team continued refining their tools, preparing for the next big operation. Its target? Thousands of users, one illegal site, and the most ambitious FBI hack the world had ever seen. But would they get away with it? In 2015, the FBI launched its most ambitious offensive against dark web crime, an operation that would come to light as Operation Pacifier. Its focal point was a Tor-hidden service called Playpen, one of the largest child pornography websites ever seen, with over 150,000 users' accounts registered. After a tip from abroad, agents managed to discover Playpen's server in North Carolina and seized it. But instead of shutting it down, the FBI did it again. They ran the illegal site themselves for nearly 2 weeks. From a government facility in Virginia, agents operated Playpen in all its horrific detail, all to quietly deploy their malware to everyone logging in. Using a single sweeping warrant from a magistrate judge, the FBI was authorized to deliver its NIT to any user who signed into Playpen during those 2 weeks. This time the scale was staggering. The malware exploited a flaw in the Tor browser's code, again a Firefox weakness, and installed a beacon on each visitor's computer. The moment a user clicked on that familiar Playpen login screen, the NIT would surreptitiously transmit their real IP and other identifiers back to FBI headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. Thousands of computers were infected around the world in this manner, from the US to Europe, from South America to possibly Asia. It was, as the Electronic Frontier Foundation later noted, the most extensive known use of government malware in US history. The results were equal parts impressive and unsettling. Over 1,000 users were successfully identified and hundreds have been prosecuted so far. But when the existence of Operation Pacifier became public through court cases, it ignited a firestorm of legal challenges. Defense lawyers argued that the FBI had violated jurisdiction by hacking computers all over the globe with a warrant from a single judge in Virginia. Several federal judges agreed that the Playpen warrant exceeded authority under Rule 41 of criminal procedure, which traditionally didn't allow searches outside a judge's district. Some evidence was tossed out, cases dismissed. Other judges, however, allowed the evidence under exceptions, given the severity of the crimes. So how did the FBI make sure they'd never face that kind of legal threat again? The Department of Justice quietly moved to change the rules. In late 2016, amidst relatively little public fanfare, the rules of federal criminal procedure were amended so that a magistrate can issue warrants to hack multiple computers even outside their district, as long as those computers are using technologies like Tor to conceal their location. In essence, they legalized and solidified the hacker army approach. The FBI's ability to conduct mass hacking operations was no longer an ad hoc trick. It was codified into their playbook. As Operation Pacifier wrapped up, one thing was clear. The FBI's experiment from 2012 had evolved into a new era of law enforcement. The Bureau now maintained a dedicated team of coders and hackers, an elite cyber squad that could craft malware as stealthy and potent as any criminal organization. This secret hacker army operated under deep secrecy, its tools closely guarded. In some instances, prosecutors chose to drop charges against certain suspects caught by an NIT rather than reveal the technical details of the malware in court, underscoring how valuable and secret these hacking tools had become to the FBI's arsenal. But with tools this powerful, how long before someone uses them for something else? Public opinion remains sharply divided. To victims of child exploitation and those who pursue predators, these operations are a godsend, a creative weapon to strike back at abusers who, without such measures, might never be found. But to privacy advocates and many in the tech community, the FBI's methods set a dangerous precedent. If the government can compromise thousands of devices en masse, how long before this capability is used beyond its original scope? The mission creep worries are not hypothetical. After all, the same Tor network that hosted Playpen also enables secure communication for activists and journalists. Each time the FBI launches a new malware attack, there's a nagging fear that the next target might be a dissident or a reporter under a broad definition of threat. In the halls of the FBI, the success of their hacker team is a point of pride and a sign of the future. In hushed meetings, officials acknowledge that cyber infiltrations of anonymous networks are now as crucial as wiretaps and undercover ops were in past decades. The FBI had a hacker army. It tasted blood. So the real question now? Where and who will they hack next? But the FBI wasn't the only agency to go dark. To see what happened when hackers turned the NSA's own weapons against the world, watch our next story: the hackers who stole the NSA's tools.